Hello, hello. Welcome to the Dafan the PofessorZ Entrepreneurship Talk Live, the live stream show. It's about 10 o'clock hour on the East Coast and 7 o'clock on the West Coast. Glad you can join me. And today we'll be talking a bit about money-making opportunities, how we should look at our money-making opportunities, and how we can utilize them and compare them. So if you're joining me new, I'm Dafan the PofessorZ. I provide entrepreneurship videos and inspirations and tips and education for video on demand. And like a few weeks ago, I started doing this live stream and to try to have a different feel of a weekly show and talk about my entrepreneurship journey and your entrepreneurship journey as well. So last week we had quite a few people joining and talk with me, and I went through the different opportunities and how to make $50,000. And I think it was a lot of people got good information out of it, and I enjoyed everybody who joined. And this week, as per some of the requests, I will be talking a bit about different kind of opportunities. Now we can actually start to evaluate what those opportunities can be. So let's see, it's going stormy outside, so if we have a power outage or if we have disruptions, I will try to get back up as soon as possible. So again, thank you for joining me. And so today we're gonna look a bit at different kind of money making opportunities as for a small business owner. So I put on the description, and any of you have already seen that we're gonna talk a little bit about independent contracting and doing certain contracting work. We will talk about reselling products, and we will talk about starting new versus buying old. We're talking about producing your own product and services, and the second thing before last, we'll talk about franchising. And at the end, I will address investing. There were quite a few comments on the live session and then some of the videos on how do someone get starting investing. I'll probably do another show just on investing itself, but at least we'll touch how investing compare as to the other opportunities I'm going to cover tonight. And generally we're going to look at, basically conduct a cost-benefit analysis, look at what the cost and the risk involved in starting a business through any of these avenues. Then we'll talk about the potential, right? But as we said last time, following last week's conversation, if we're only trying to get $50,000, there's multiple ways. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of ways to actually get to that goal. If we're talking about making $1 million, a little bit harder. But again, let me just reiterate: if you can find the right formula to make $50,000, it is better and easier to be able to replicate that multiple times and get you to $1 million and beyond. So get good at doing something first, then we'll try to scale from that. All right, so I'm going to try something new today. So last week we were doing this board, and I had my marker here, right here, a marker, and I wrote and I put it up, I wrote and put it up. This time I'm going to try a little bit different, and I set up my studio here, and I can do a external view. I can do a split screen view, which I can write on my computer and then have notes on the side. So I'm going to try that and see how it works. If it doesn't work, please put it in the comments. Let me know it doesn't work well. Then I'll go back to using my board. I have my board here as well with my. So let me go back to the regular screen. And also I have my laptop side. I will be viewing the laptop to see if any questions and comments come in. So if I look to the side, don't be alarmed. I'm just looking at the laptop. All right. So first thing we're going to do is look at the suitability of these opportunities. We're going to be examining some opportunities, but at the very least, how should we look at them? Like, what will be, why are we evaluating them, and how are we going to go about evaluating them? So let me go back to my overlay. So the things that we're generally going to, the resources that you have that you can go towards that business venture, and the skills that you might have, and then that will lead us down to ideas. And these three things, you saw that on some of the on-demand videos. I mentioned this quite a few times on how the triangle. Let's talk about resources. So many of us have limited resources, because if you have a lot of resources, maybe we should jump directly down to the bottom and talk about franchise and talk about investing. But some of us really have limited resources. Limited resources, it's difficult to get anything started. And these resources could be constrained to money, just money, or credit. Credit is a big deal, because if you need credit to get loans to be able to fund your business. And then human resources, maybe a side hustle, and you have very limited time as resources. Time is actually one of the biggest resources that you have. And also, when you are, if you have a big network, it's easier to sell things, right? And I said last week, if you just simply become a part of it, as I was saying, if you have a large network, you can use your human resources as a resource to sell things. You can call up your network, you can get your friends. I think I said last time, most of us can probably get 1,000 people together on Facebook, on social media, and if we want to sell them $10 each, you can probably get $10,000, right? So that's the resource that we can have. But if we're selling some very high value product, like I'm a lawyer, right? So if I sell legal services and I want to charge $500 an hour, that sounds like a lot of money. But how many people in my network can actually afford $500 an hour? So that might be a little bit tough sell. So just consider what kind of resources you have. And second, skills. What do you have, right? I'm going to actually talk a little bit in 1 second about the difficulty of getting started. So the skills, if you have a set of skills, if you know how to make woodwork, you can just go ahead and make furniture and for sale, right? If you don't have the skills already, you have to go and learn how to do that. So some of these things I'm going to talk about does not require skills to operate. You just need general business skills. But for some other people, it's for some other opportunities, that's difficult. And a lot of times we use our resources to trade for skills. And, so then that means if you have enough resources, you can gain the skills, or vice versa. If you have a lot of skills, then you need less resources. So suitability. So next we're going to talk about suitability. Pardon my handwriting, of course. So about suitability is whether an opportunity is good for you, right? An opportunity might be great for me, but it would not necessarily be good for you. There's two things that we look at for suitability. Let me see if I can scroll here. Oh, sorry. There we go. So, two things we're looking at about suitability. One, we talk about if it will get you to your goal. And two is how much it will cost you. Right? I have two examples written down here. I'm a lawyer again. I can open a law office. So the suitability for a lawyer to open a law office obviously is pretty, direct, and, because I'm a lawyer, I can just go open a law office. But imagine if you're someone who wanted to open a law office, because it sounds like an opportunity to make a lot of money, and yes, you could. What does it take for you to get to that point? First, you need to go to school for 3 years or more, right? If you graduated college already, you have to go to law school for 3 years. Then you got to pass the bar. Then you got to work for a couple years before you can be confident to open your own business. So that's 5 years worth of time. And so is that really suitable for someone? If you're already 55, 60 years old, you want to have a second income, it sounds great to be a lawyer, but would you put is it suitable to put 5 years into it? But on the other hand, if you're only 25 and you want to open a law office, you want to go be a lawyer, and I was 30 when I decided that, and that was still suitable. So on the other hand, one of the simplest way to make a decent amount of money is to own an apartment building, right? We talk about real estate investing. I'm going to talk about real estate investing at the end. But if you have an apartment building with, let's say, 10 units, and each tenant paid you $1,000, that's $10,000 a month, that's just coming in. You have to pay for handyman, you have to do some maintenance, but it doesn't cost that much, and you can have passive income come in it. And a lot of us like passive income. But how much money does it cost to buy a 10-unit apartment building, right? So think about that. So if you have $500,000 on hand, yes, go ahead, invest into an apartment building. You can have passive income, and then you can leverage it out by borrowing more money and buying more apartment buildings. That's a sure way to success to make money, but that takes a lot of resources that we might not have. So maybe that's not suitable for you, even if it's a great business plan, right? All right, so just keep that in mind. What is your goal? If your goal is $50,000, your goal is $100,000. what can you afford, what's the opportunity cost for you, what's your resources constraints look like. So that dictates, that really it put a lot of constraints on what you can do, and that will dictate the what's the better plan for you. All right. So without further ado, we will go into the business opportunities. So first, let's talk about independent contractors. So self-employment. Or independent contractor. So this is how I first got started being an entrepreneur. I think I told the story a little bit last week, and also in one of the other videos. I started off as a web developer, and that's because I was working as an independent contractor, and I got to dictate my hours. I picked my clients. I went out and did a lot of things, selling. I honed my craft. I made better products. That's how people were able to appreciate what I did, and I started making money doing that. So the potential here is, there's a lot of potential. So there's a potential to have a higher hourly rate. If you're working, you might be doing some work already that's suitable for independent contractor work. Maybe you're getting paid, let's just say you get paid $20 an hour. If you become a contractor, maybe now you can get paid $40 an hour, twice the rate. And why is that? It is because you have to pay your own taxes. You have to be responsible for your own equipment, and there's no security as to a job. You don't get unemployment. You don't get benefits. You don't get retirements. When you're young, that's all okay. So maybe you can make more cash by being a what they call 1099 employee, independent contractors. So there's the balance of good and bad. You know, you couldn't get unemployment if you get laid off, and sometimes the contract not renewed. I was an independent contractor for a long time as a web developer, and I had my side job working there as well. So that's the first step, the easiest way to become an entrepreneur. On the other hand, there's some cost there, right? The cost is, how do you find the customers? It's easy to go find a job, but once you're working, you can just continue to do that job, or you can move on to another job. There's job boards, there are employment websites. How do you find customers as independent contractors? If you're a web developer and you're working for yourself, you have to do a lot of work to find customers, and you got competition. So the demand is an issue, to generate demand for yourself, and to be able to find the customer base, to create a market. That's hard. On the other hand, one of the biggest potentials of independent contracting is the opportunity to sell other products. So while I was a web developer, and there was a company that needed to buy new computers. Since I was the guy already working on the computer stuff, working on the technology piece, and I just overheard that I need to buy computers. So I actually got a vendor to sell me a large quantity of computers so they can upgrade all the computers in the office building. Right? So I was working for this company and I was making websites, but I ended up being able to sell 20 to 30 computers. And then on top of that, the support time. So the installation of the new computer, to support the new computers. So I end up from a very small contract of making a website to ultimately being a tech support person for that company. And I sold them product. Then when they need new mouse, new mice, new keyboards, new webcams, and other AV or tech needs, and they came to me. So I ended up doing quite a bit of a retail of tech product based on that. So you can do the same. If you're working somewhere with a large employer as an independent contractor, one, you're saving them money because they're not having you as an employee, and you're a contractor. And two, there's opportunities you're going to be able to learn. And because you're operating for yourself, right? You're an external entity. You're a vendor, even though you're just selling your own services. You're a vendor, so there's opportunity to sell more things to the company, because every company, every business buy different things. If you just get to know the people, you are friendly with the purchasing staff, you should be able to find opportunity to make more money in other ways. So Omar, so you asked me, were the clients mostly local? If you're talking about web designs, believe it or not, web is a large, it's internet is everywhere. But most of my clients were local, largely because it's very difficult to cultivate the kind of relationship to be able to get clients, new clients. even in a web design space or even in IT space, any space, word of mouth referrals is a really big deal. That's why I said your network. Once you work with one client and they're happy, they will go to happy hours, they will go to their associations, they have friends who are similar business owners, because like now half of my friends are lawyers, the other half are business owners, because that's who I am. So if I let's say if I have an electrician that worked on one of my buildings and I really like their work, I will recommend them to everyone else. So ultimately you could get a national business client base, but it's easier to do it locally because of the word of mouth and reputation you can build. And also, when you are very small, your clients are small, they treasure personal service. So for you to be able to visit them like every month, weekly, you take them out to lunch, you have a personal relationship, you can call them, you can see them, and there's better reputation locally. There's more trust locally with somebody that can come and deal with you immediately, and then your marketing reach it's stronger in the immediate area. Although I think the coronavirus probably changes that, because now more and more people working remote. So once this is over and we get back to work, maybe we're open to more distance remote kind of work. Now more people is going to be doing stuff over conferencing instead of doing in-person meetings. All right, so that's thank you for the question. If you have more questions, let me know. I'm looking over on the computer. So yeah, so that's independent contractors. I actually think that the one of the lower risk way of being an entrepreneur is to get a job or becoming an independent contractor for a mid-sized company, because like I said just now, there's a way to build a relationship and start selling products and services that you didn't start off, right? I have multiple experience. I can give you many examples. I had an example where I went in as a front-end builder on a contract. I was just brought in to build some learning modules for a couple months at a high rate, and I was doing contract work because I enjoy the high rate. And then other things came along, and I ended up doing more work and then programming more things, and even referred people to it and make referral fees as well. And lawyers, if you don't know, in Pennsylvania especially, lawyers can take a referral fee. So if you're a lawyer and you referred me a client, I usually pay you 10% to 33% of what I make out of the case. So professional networks and networking and the referral is a big deal. So once you get into a company as a contractor, then you have all the people in your company as referral, right? That's free marketing. That's free advertising. You can go to the cafeteria, you can go and just talk to everyone and tell you what you did, right? You can just say, hey, I'm so-and-so and I'm a new contractor doing XYZ, but I also do ABC, and if you guys ever need anything, it doesn't have to be business, it could be personal. You could be working at a company as a contractor accountant, but end up doing taxes for individual, right? That's something possible too. I've actually had someone on Uber that I wrote it down too, just to remind myself. So a lot of people are now driving Ubers as either a second job or first job, and Uber and Lyft are just a way to make extra income. And you're actually, if you're driving Ubers and Lyft, you're being a entrepreneur, because you're managing your own schedule, your own workload, you're deciding what's worth, how much you make, and Uber set the price, but you know how long you can work and that kind of stuff. But one of the best thing about Uber and Lyft, not that I'm recommending anyone to drive Uber Lyft, but if you're doing Uber and Lyft, you will meet so many people in your car. One, if you're friendly with the people, you get more tips. Second, if you are friendly with the people, you can sell something else. I got into Uber one day to go to work, and I was in a mood to chat with the driver, so I ended up chatting with the driver, and the driver was really friendly. It turns out the driver was a real estate agent, right? So then we end up talking. I do some real estate work. I ultimately end up not using that person, but if I was really looking for a real estate agent, I could be, that could be one person I already had a somewhat of a personal interaction with, and I would enjoy working with that person if I like that person. So let's say if you're a contractor, or if you're a real estate agent, you're anything, and you're doing something on the side as a contractor, you can easily upsell your own service or something in some other area, right? So that's something that you can consider. So that's independent contractor. And next, we're talking about reselling products. So reselling products is like being a vendor to sell something. One of the best example nowadays to be an Amazon seller, right? There's two ways to do Amazon selling. You can do drop shipment, which if you go on Google or any other message board, a lot of people are saying, we're making so much money on drop shipment. So one of the easiest things to do drop shipment, what does drop shipment means? You take the order, you transmit the order to someone else, somewhere else, and the third party will ship it for you. Like they drop ship on your behalf to your customer. So that's a easy way to make some passive income. You create a website, you create a social media account, you create an Amazon account or Shopify, whatever, and then you sell certain products. You figure out where you get the product from, and once the order comes in, the software, Amazon software, or Shopify software, or WooCommerce software will notify the person the company that's actually shipping the product, and they will ship the product out. So the potential is not that high in the beginning because the margin is very low. The amount of money you can make per product is pretty low because you're really being a salesperson for someone else's product. And on the other hand, you have to provide customer service. People have an issue because they bought it from you. They have to directly deal with you. And you have very little control over the shipper, right? If the company that you sell something from doesn't ship the product, you can't just drive down there and tell them to ship it. You have to work with them and deal with them until they actually fulfill the order. But another way to do reselling product is to buy the product and then store it in your house or in an office or in a warehouse and sell it individually. If you do that way, if you're reselling product and warehousing yourself, it's sort of like you becoming regular retail store, right? If you go to Macy's, you go to JCPenney's, you go to the mall, that's what everybody does. They buy inventory and they sell the inventory out of their stores. Maybe you sell it over a retail store. Maybe you sell it over on the internet. Maybe you even still sell through Amazon. But either way, you're reselling a product. There, the margin is a little bit higher. You can probably make 30% to 50% of the selling price. So if you're selling something for $100, for example, you can probably get $50. You can probably make $50 at the most and $30 on the lower end. And in some specialized areas, like there are people selling auto parts and motorcycle parts that I used to deal with, and we only get like 20% or 15% margin. That means if I sell something for $100, it costs me $85 to buy it, and I make 15. And it's also pretty cumbersome, one, to store the product, right? So you need a place, you need a garage, a basement, if you want to do ship from home, and then you have to ship it. You have to get boxes. Most people don't think about how tough it is to be able to box stuff, package stuff, and then do UPS and send it out. I mean, UPS can come and do daily pickups or every other day or weekly. USPS, the postal service, does too. But you still have to package them. We actually have a couple of boxes of jewelry, like fashion jewelry, sitting around in this room. You can't see it on the camera. We used to deal with jewelry, had an online boutique. And so if you sell $5 of something, you have to take the jewelry out, sort it, put it in a box, package it, and then label it, and then take it to the post office and have it picked up. And ultimately, it's really cumbersome. That was one of the earliest business we did. We imported fashion jewelry from China and then sold it, over online. There's the early days of e-commerce. It's probably a little easier way to do that now, but it's still cumbersome, and then you don't make much money. The margin is very high though. In that example, like getting fashion jewelry from China, we paid maybe 10 to 20 cents per piece, and we sold it for like $5 to $6. So that's unimaginable margin, 20 cents to $5. But so you make percentage-wise, you make a lot. But those products really are not worth that much, so you just have to send volume. What ultimately should have happened is if we got big, we could hire like 20, 30 shippers, have a giant warehouse, and just send it out like Amazon does. But it wasn't my cup of tea. I wanted to make more money per transaction. I guess that's ultimately why I became a lawyer, right? So that's selling products. Remember the two ways to sell product: drop ship, low margin, but less headache and less things needed for you to work, and then buy and holding inventory. Those are still the traditional way. I'm going down the list of what traditional entrepreneurship look like. And then third way is producing the product. And producing the products or services is slightly different because you are the one making the product. And if you're making a product, you get to make more money. One, you can set your own price, right? If you're, let's say food, right? You cook food in your kitchen and you sell it on demand or on a meal plan. These things are actually everywhere, and it really should make, if someone thought of this and made an app of this earlier, maybe this pandemic will made you really rich. If you had a nationwide platform of letting people subscribe to a meal plan, and then individuals can make their meals and then deliver to the third parties that bought the meal plan. If we had that, kind of like Airbnb, but for food, for home cooked food, maybe that exists. If someone made this like in the last 6 months, they would have made out very well. I had a friend who was cooking at home and then selling it. So I think she's doing pretty well because people can't eat out. Well, they can eat out, but it's difficult. So they have somebody bring food to you, and it's home cooked. You know, especially if you eat vegan or if you're vegetarian or if you're on a diet, that's probably really cool. So producing your own product lets you set your own price, and it's unique, and you can develop a very loyal following, right? Just think about in our daily lives, there are places I go to that I would not go somewhere else. At microbreweries or beers, it's the same way. If you like something with an individual taste, you will probably keep going to it. But it's hard to build a loyal following if you're selling products that somebody else can get. If you're the only place that can get this product that you make, then obviously you're going to be in demand, and if people like it, they will keep coming back. And then you can raise the price. You can, you can. If it costs you $10 to make something, maybe you can sell it for $100. If people really like it, they will sell it for $100. And that's what services are like that, right? There's a million lawyers out there. Why do I have loyal clients? Because they like my service. They like what I have to offer. So they know that if they paid the price that I'm demanding, then they will get what they want. And then if they go somewhere else to pay the same price, they might not get it. I'm not. My rate is pretty. My rate is reasonably medium based. So I'm 500 an hour or more, and it's low for a large firm. It's a little high for small firms, but people know what they get. So I have a very niche following, a loyal following. Those customers come to me and pay that rate. But if you don't know, you don't know. So, but that leads me to the issue is that you create your own market. So you have to let people know what you sell and how good you are. And that takes marketing, takes advertising, takes track history, right? I had the same firm. I can tell you, when I started my own law firm, I advertised on Google for almost a year and got 0 clients from the Google advertisement. And I stopped Google advertisement and I just started working with clients. And the client referrals brought in so much more clients than the Google advertisement ever did. And now I had just recently stopped doing one line of business and I stopped advertising on Google for it. We still get calls all the time because people will find reviews and referrals for that business, for that line of business I'm no longer doing. It's a business decision why I stopped doing that, but the residual goodwill takes a long time to build. But because you're the unique producer, because I produce that service on my own and I'm unique, then people will keep coming. So if you pick the right product and service and you just start building it up, give it time, and that's something that's more sustainable in the long term rather than selling reselling product. Because if you're drop shipping, if you're reselling product, what if someone go on Amazon and sell it for cheaper, or can guarantee to ship it faster? Or what if you lose the supplier? What if the supplier closes down? What if a lot of people were drop shipping stuff from China? They were paying Chinese factories to ship stuff here or ship it directly from China. What if the factory closes because of pandemic? You're not going to be able to replenish your inventory and you have to shut down. But if you make your own product, you have a little bit more guarantee and flexibility. All right, so that's producing product, and we have starting. Yes. So we want to talk about starting new versus buying. And by buying, I mean buying a business. So one of the easiest way to get started in business as a small business owner is just to go out and buy a business. if you go online and look, I was looking today at buying a bank. Don't ask me, because the $1 million thought from last week got me to think of a commercial consumer product that involves actually owning the bank, so I can offer that. So I'm going to talk about that in a future episode as an update, because I'm not sure if I'm going down that route. But yeah, I was looking at, so you can buy any kind of business. You want to buy a restaurant, instead of opening up a new space, buying equipment, you can just go find a restaurant that's open. You want to open a spa, you can buy an existing one. So then if these things are available, then why do you not buy it, or why would you consider starting new? So before we start, why should we buy an existing business? Just imagine, forget about the price for a second. There is a successful business out there, and if you watch my other video, I said if there's a successful pizza shop, one of the 3 ways to start a business is just to start a new one across the street. And people weren't happy about that, because that sounds like an unfair way to start. So then let's go back. One of the easiest way to start a pizza shop, or to have a successful pizza shop, just to find a successful one and buy it, right? Let's say prices no matter. You can take over a business. You can walk in, pay the owner a bunch of money, the owner leaves, then you step in as the owner. The business is already operating. You don't have to buy any inventory. You don't have to buy any equipment. You can get the owners to tell you how to order stuff, how to operate it. You already have employees. You have to already have customers. It's just going to keep rolling and rolling. Last year, we had looked at buying a pizza shop. I'm actually buying a pizza shop. They wanted, I think the price was $50,000. So you could, it doesn't include the building. It doesn't include the equipment. It was all leased from the landlord. So you paid them $50,000, then you can immediately own this pizza shop that's already operating. And they do a lot of catering orders, and they have walk-in traffic. We looked and we ultimately not go through with it, because I looked around and trying to find a manager. I want nothing to do with the actual business. I just want to buy it and hold it and produce income. But I realized I had to find someone to manage it, and I was not going to set foot into the pizza shop, even just to manage it. So it was difficult to find a good manager, and the manager there said they were not going to stay. So that leads me to the drawback of buying, is that in order to maintain a continuity of business, you have to operate it. And to operate it, you have to know what to do, or you have to be willing to do it. A lot of times, if you have saved up enough money to buy a business, perhaps you want nothing to do with the actual operation of the business, because you probably are better at making money how you save the money to begin with, right? So perhaps that's what you don't want. You don't want to step in and operate the business. You just want to own it and run it. Then it's harder to find an opportunity like that. And second, what's the risk? Why are they selling in the first place? You could go online, you can pull up a bunch of business listings as profitable, cash flowing restaurant, and they wanted X amount of dollars. And you got to think, why are they selling? If it's, a lot of times they said the owner is relocating or the owner is retiring. Well, that kind of makes sense. If the owner is old and retiring, then they don't want to keep operating it. Then maybe there's nothing wrong with the business. There's no risk to be had. But on the other hand, if someone has owned the business for 30 years and they're going to leave, how many of the customers are going to stick with you? I'm not so sure about that, because people are very loyal to in these mom and pop small businesses, people are loyal to the owner. So if you step in, maybe the customers won't come back. Or if they come back, realize there's new management, maybe you run it slightly different, because you can't just be identical to the other person. And on the other hand, if you're really good at managing, or if you have the skills, the knowledge, and the experience in managing a pizza shop, why would you buy buy an old one? Why don't you take your time, take the money you're going to invest, and then find a new location, and a location that you like, and build a business that you like in a way that you like it, right? Because you have the expertise. So that's why buying a business is always sort of precarious transaction, because most people who choose to buy are a little intimidated into starting, because they're not so good at the business side, or they don't have as much experience. But that's probably the exact reason why you shouldn't buy a restaurant, because you rely on or buy an existing company, because you will rely on someone else to operate it, and if you lose that person, you might lose all your money. because you're paying a premium for the existing part. Versus starting new. Starting new definitely usually takes longer, right? And then you gotta know how to set up your business, find a location, do the business plan, buy the equipment, and so there's a lot more work and it's a lot longer. But they call that, in real estate, they call that sweat equity, because when you work hard on a project and you put time into it, that becomes the equity, the worth in the business. So your time and effort build up value in the business in the long run. So as a basic principle, personally, I still rather open a new business than buying one, although I have bought them in the past. So it's based on individual ability and individual preference. So next, I will talk about franchising. And a lot of people have asked about franchising, because franchising is usually one of the most attractive way to start a business, because you don't need to do anything. You just need to come up with the money. You come up with the money. Let's say you want to open a McDonald's or any other chain restaurant. You come up with the money, and they might even help you borrow the money. So they take every little hurdle out of the way. So you show up and you go through some training. You sign the paperwork. They will find you the money. One, they will find you the money. Two, they will find a location you can build on. Then they will arrange for for the equipment to be shipped, for the building to be fit out. They help you with the hiring the employees. They help you with training, and they will bring you business. So this is the strongest argument for franchising, is that national franchises does a lot of advertising that you can't afford, right? If you own a McDonald's or Burger King, they might even be able to afford the $5-6 million to do a Super Bowl ad that everyone would know that this is a new sandwich and any new product. And when they drive down the street and see your location, even though you didn't advertise, they will come in because the national brand is strong. But you still do have to pay for that. All right, that's the drawback, is that every franchise owner would have to every independent owner in a franchise who bought a franchise have to contribute monthly into a fund for all the franchises. So you have to pay usually a common marketing fee. You have to pay a franchise fee so the main company can make money, and also you have to contribute money into this fund so they can do national advertising. So in a way, having a franchise bring in money for you, and but that guarantee comes as a cost, right? Risk equals money. So they reduce some of the hurdles and difficulties and challenges, but you have to pay for it. And one of the things that shuts out most people for franchises is that the capital requirement for a franchise is a lot. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think McDonald's requires more than $1 million in assets net worth before they even consider you. For some of the smaller regional franchises, you can get it for cheaper. You can qualify cheaper, but it's still not easy to qualify for. So that's why franchising is usually, if you have a lot of money, you want to diversify your investments, you want to diversify your business interests, franchise is still a good way to go. Certain franchises, but if it's your only pot of money, it's probably a little difficult to suggest that you take all the money you have and throw it into a franchise, because it really is costly and it's not always guaranteed to be successful, because location still matters. And that's why they require a lot of net worth. If you open a new McDonald's, for example, it probably will take 6 months or a year before everybody realizes that there's a new location, and then they will start coming in. But in the meantime, you got to pay employees, you got to pay for the building, and they want prime locations. You sink a lot of money into construction, then you have to pay them monthly continuously because they're doing advertising for all the franchises. So you need a lot of money to survive that initial build-up and hopefully ultimately make money. If you go on business brokerage websites, you can find a lot of franchises for sale, like ice cream shops or like fast food restaurants, like small, like in the mall fast food restaurants, and there are service franchises. So the fact that there's a lot of franchises for sale and they're not worth a whole lot of money as compared to how much you had to invest into it means the chance of success is not really all that high, and you really you're taking a great risk. So again, if you have money, if you have additional money to spend, you want to own a side business that's hands off, then go with a franchise. Just be careful with the success rate. But not my suggestion for a first or only entrepreneurship venture. All right, so those are the types. Let me review for a second. So I talked about independent contractor, talked about selling products, reselling products, talked about producing products, talked about new versus buy, and talked about franchising. And so lastly, I'm going to come to investment. So in a way, investment is still an entrepreneur venture, right? Because you're not working for money. You're doing something to generate money, generate return, generate income. So we can, I still consider it as investment. And there's multiple ways to invest. But I want to just talk about the tolerance for risk versus return. So the if you take economic class, you go to business school, we always talk about we can express risk and return hand in hand. The higher the risk, the higher the return potential you should have. And the lower the risk, the lower return potential you should have. So a very safe investment, low risk, is low return. And that's just how the market works. And so we have multiple investment opportunities that range from pretty safe or very guaranteed to pretty safe to some kind of risky to really high risk. And your risk tolerance would determine what you're comfortable with. But your risk tolerance, unfortunately, only also determines how much money you could stand to make, right? So remember, I go back to the first place, is that your entrepreneurial venture should support the goal that you want to reach. So if you want to have a very high return, you need to take on more risk, unfortunately, unless you get lucky. But we can't count on luck. So then with that in mind, let's go through some investments. I'll do another episode just on investment anyway, but let's just talk about, I wrote down a few investment things. So one, simple as savings. So you put money in a bank, savings bank. And then with real estate holding, like if you buy your own house, invest your money into your own house and let it appreciate. We're talking about funds like mutual funds and ETF. These you can buy from a broker. We have stocks, individual stocks, and we have some more exotic instruments. We'll talk about derivatives. And then we have real estate rental. This could be commercial or residential. And then we'll talk about flip. So real estate flip. This is like, buying a house, fix it up, and selling it. So I'm going to tell you, this is actually by list of risk preference or risk tolerance. Savings and bank is very safe. You can save up to $250,000 into any deposit institutions like a credit union or a bank. It's insured. You cannot lose the money. The bank closes, the government or the insurance will come in and pay you. So because there is no risk, the rate is very low. So the rate of return, all these rates are based on annual basis of every year. It's probably 1 to 2%. With today's situation, you're probably not even going to be able to find 2%. 1%, I think I saw rates today at about 1.5%. And real estate holding, if you do your research, real estate holding traditionally is less than 5% appreciation. That means if you bought a house for $100,000 last year, you would have probably gained $5,000 in price now on average. So over time, 5% is not that high. Funds, ETFs are exchange traded funds, which just mimics the stock market. So the general stock market traditionally has been about 8% on average over time. S&P has an 8.5% return, I think, over the last 100 years or something like that. it's not high. So you invest $100,000, you get $8,000 a year. You're not getting that this year. It's getting killed. So you see, the risk is coming up higher. So if you buy individual stocks, I bought Apple stock when it was $90. Today is $270. Like 2 months ago, it was like 3 something. So I bought stock for 50 cents in 2009, and then it ended up like about $5, $6. That's 100 times the money. So imagine if you put $1,000 into that stock, and it's not unique. There were probably like 1,000, 10,000 stocks you could bought back then that had recovered. So I bought stock at 50 cents, and then it went to $5. That's 100 times gain. That means if you have $100 in 2008, 2009, and you bought that stock $1,000 into that stock, and today it will be worth $100,000. You had $10,000 and you bought that stock back then, all $10,000. You at 100 times over, it will be $1 million. Think about that. So a lot of people on the recovery did end up making a lot of money, but they also lost a lot of money on the way down. Just like this year, like my portfolio probably lost 50%. So if I had put more money into it as the recovery goes, it's not over yet. It's not yet in the recovery. But once this coronavirus thing blows over, if the stock market goes back up, if you put money in today, it will see some very high growth. But even on the normal market conditions, you can probably find stocks that can grow, I think, at a reasonable amount, like 20-30%. Right? So I'm going to write 20-30%. But you also find stocks that goes down 20-30%. And you might pick a winner. If you bought Amazon for less than $1,000, I think it was like $300-400 5 years ago. Now it's worth like $3,100, I think, yesterday. So they're still 5-6 times the growth. So you can probably find 20-30% stocks. That's possible, and it's not even just possible. It's likely. But remember, the average return is only 8% because a lot of stock loses money as well. So the risk again goes up. So let me go down. So that's the risk arrow. Risk. Alright, so I should have done that in the first place. So the risk goes up, and then the return goes up as well. And the return is on this side. So, and then derivatives, I day trade stock options. You can easily make 50 or 100% per day, but you can also easily lose 50 to 100% per day. So that's a lot higher. If you do it right, you can do, I'm gonna write 30+% or more. Could be 100%. But the risk is very, very high. And then down here I wrote real estate rent. I really should have put these two. Let me divide those. That doesn't go with the arrow. So real estate rent, generally you can find 10 to 20% returns as well. That means you invest $100,000. If you invest $100,000 into a rental property, you might be able to get $10,000 or $20,000 back per year. But you also stand to not make anything if it sits vacant, right? If it's for rental. And second, if you get a bad tenant, you have to evict them. If the house is broken, you have to go fix it. So the costs and maintenance costs and the expenses, and there's quite a bit. But also 10 to 20% is really good returns. So the best way to do real estate rental investing is to aggregate apartments, right? So if you have 10 or 20 buildings, even they are very cheap and low rent buildings, if you have 10 or 20 of them together, then you can better shoulder the risk. Maybe 2 tenants will be evicted. Maybe you 1 or 2 or 3 is vacant, but you still have, if you have 10 of them, you still have 6 making money for you. So overall, you can average 10 to 20% return. And real estate flip, a lot of people like this flipping because you don't have to deal with tenants. So you go on and buy a house and you fix it up and you sell it, and you can probably, I say on a good average is 30 to 50% return. But 50 to 35 return also carries a high risk, because what if the house doesn't sell, right? You sits on the market, you have to pay property tax, you have to pay insurance, you have to pay maintenance, again, utilities. You can't just shut it off in the winter times. You have to keep the heat going and things like that. And real estate market also doesn't appreciate a whole lot, and then it has just gone through a crash 10 years ago or 12 years ago. So you should remember, real estate is not necessarily as safe as guaranteed as we think it is. So you still got some issues there. But also it costs money to buy and sell real estate. You need to hire an agent to buy and sell. You don't really have to, but most people do. And you have to pay commissions, even if you don't use an agent. If the buyer brings an agent, you have to share commission with you have to offer commission to the agent. So that's 3%, 6%, whatever the agent cost that costs you. Depends on where you live. There's another 2 to 4% transfer tax. So closing costs is going to cost you like 10% or more. So if you bought a house for $100,000, you put $30,000 into fixing it. Now you're $130,000, and you list it for $200,000, and you pay $20,000 in closing. That's 10%, and now you're $150,000. So you make $50,000 on your $130,000 investment. So that's 30 to 50%, and it might take 3 to 6 months, depends on how fast your contractors work. So that's why it's easier to do real estate if you can do the fixing up and you can serve as a real estate agent. So that's why you go to a lot of, if you go online and look at real estate, a lot of the house being for sale, they have to disclose that the seller is also an agent, because by law they have to disclose their association. They're a licensed real estate professional. They have to disclose that because they save the 10% closing costs, and they also might be able to do some work. So that's how a lot of flippers make money. You can actually make decent amount of money flipping, but you need some money to start off, or you can stomach a lot of risk. And it's best when you can do multiple projects at once, because there's a selling season. Spring and summer is selling season. Winter and fall is not quite. So if you only sell one house a year, unless you sell $1 million houses, you're not going to make that much profit in the long run. So you got to do multiple, or it's hard to do them quick, so you have to do them multiple. I can. All right. So, and to go on, you should plan it out. Sorry, I'm reading your comment. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second, because a lot of people ask me about CBD and cannabis. So, all right. So real estate, that's real estate. I can probably do I'll do a session in the future. I'll list it on investing, especially particularly related to real estate, because I have a lot of experience going to sheriff sales, buying foreclosed properties, and dealing with foreclosed properties. So I can definitely offer some insights on that. All right, so let me end that with the split screen, and that's for this week's agenda. All right, let me go back to full. All right, so Omar, see, your question is on going into a saturated but growing market. So you said it right already. It's saturated. Why would you want to go into a saturated? It doesn't even have to be saturated. It could just be a well-recognized market. If everyone is doing it, then you have a lot of competition, right? Maybe the barrier to entry is low, maybe it's not, but why would you go into a market with a lot of competition? You know what happens in a very saturated, competitive market without a collective is there's a race to the bottom as far as the price goes. This happens in restaurants. I used to work in Chinese restaurants, and I had some restaurant clients. And then I deal with restaurants quite a bit in sort of commercial litigation in my law work. So a lot of restaurants do is the only way to compete to get people in the door is to lower the price. So if there's 3 restaurants on the same street, I will be the first, and the gas stations do this all the time too. I lower the price because I think I'm lower the price. I'm going to get somebody to come in. So people do come because they see I'm selling the same thing, but I'm lowering the price. Then the other restaurant will lower the price. Then somebody else lower the price. Maybe in the beginning we were making 20 to 30% on our products, and at the end of the day, 3 months later, everybody's making 5% on the product, and nobody wins. Why? Because once more than one company lowers the price, it's very difficult to raise the price back up again. And on cannabis, you probably, I don't know if you've heard, so in Oregon or Washington, some of the early adopter states, they gave out too many licenses to grow. So the marijuana prices went very low because everybody is competing on price, on quality too, but on price. And then there's an oversupply. It end up that there's more supply than demand, so the price further crashes. so nobody can sell anything, and then they weren't allowed to export it. So the problem with oversaturated market, there are so many of them to do examples, but I think CBD and cannabis is almost getting to that point, which is you just go on a price binge and then you keep competing on price and no one end up making anything. So if you can stick around and you can be the last one standing, everybody closes, then you will make money eventually, but you're going to lose money or not make money in a long time. And maybe there are better markets to get into because there's the opportunity cost of what you're doing with your time too. If you're competing in a very crowded marketplace, then maybe you're foregoing some other opportunities you could be doing, right? And regulated market is also kind of, I try not to touch regulated market myself. There are people like at one point everybody's doing home care, everybody's doing anything to do with licenses. Taxi cab is the same way, right? Let me just use taxi as for example. Taxi was I'll answer that in a second. So a taxi, for example, was a great industry. That's why medallions cost so much, cost $1 million. But when the regulatory landscape changes, you can no longer support the price structure. So let me address that. It says it's difficult to acquire customers. Of course, it's just difficult. It's difficult to acquire customers in the first place. In a saturated market, it's even more difficult because it's hard to differentiate yourself from others. So then you have to spend more money to acquire them because customer acquisition costs it's a science, right? If you make an app, it costs $2 to $3 per download, but you also know that if you made an app and paid $2 for somebody to download it, they're probably deleting in 30 minutes. So retention is a problem. So even in CBD, if you can acquire the customers, let's say you figure out a genius marketing way to acquire customers, and they come in, they buy a product. And then your competitors see that they buy your product. They'll just cover your product and lower their price. And then they will take customers from you. And I don't think like I said earlier in this hour, I don't think customers build loyalty over product that you don't make. So if you just like in cannabis, if you just dispensary, and that's a bigger problem than just being a grower, because if you grow something that people like, then at least you can build loyalty around that brand. The long-term value would be great. As it stands, the long-term value for the customer is great, right? Because I'm not gonna go into whether it's addictive or not, but at least I think it's a retention-heavy product. But so was vaping, right? What happened to vaping now? Who's vaping? And who's going to be vaping 6 months from now? So tobacco was the ultimate product because it was addictive and it was expensive and it was cool at one point, right? When I was a teenager, it was cool to smoke, and in some foreign countries, it's still cool to smoke. But what happens? The attitude for tobacco probably changed, not quite overnight, but over a few years it changed. The attitude toward vaping changed overnight. Vaping started off as a substitute for tobacco, a safe substitute for tobacco, and all of a sudden it's not safe because it's killing young people's lungs. And now we're trying to ban it. A lot of places are banning it. So, the long-term value is great as we stand now, but it's hard to maintain it because we just don't know what's going to happen. Excuse me. We just don't know what's going to happen in the future. And second, because the long-term value is great, that means people are willing to pay more on the acquisition costs, and that's probably why the market is saturated. If you think a customer if the customer value per year, let's just make up a number. Let's say you can make $1,000 off of a customer per year, and an average customer stays for 10 years. That's $10,000, and discounted to present maybe $5,000. If your customer value is $5,000, then you can afford to pay $1,000 to acquire it, right? So then a lot of people are going to look at that math and say, hey, we can gain $5,000 per customer, so let's just go and dump $1,000 into starting the business, running it at a loss, and advertising the hell out of it because we can afford to pay $1,000, $1,500 and then still make it back on the back end. But what if you invested all into this and then it stops? It just goes away. Then you're totally dead in the water. And one of the current example, believe it or not, is fracking. I don't know if you follow the news. The oil price for made contracts went negative. That means they have to pay people to buy those oil because everybody's stuck at home. Nobody's driving and using gas. But even before this, natural gas prices was lower. It crashed in 2016, I think, and it was still going lower. So in Pennsylvania, a lot of people had jumped in and borrowed a lot of money to start these fracking operations to try to get natural gas out of the ground in northern Pennsylvania. And they borrowed a lot of money, and they were making money in the beginning. But then the regulatory landscape changes, or people's behavior changes. People drive less or use less energy or want more sustainable energy. Now all of a sudden, the long-term value when they borrow money is no longer there and will never come back. And then they get screwed. So I think for larger corporations, they can shoulder these downturns. They can deal with it. They can absorb it. But for smaller businesses, if you have limited amount of money to invest, I'd be really hesitant betting on anything long term. I've owned business in multiple industries where you think there's long-term value, but things change. And even in healthcare, in home care industry, it was good last year. And then state came in and tried to do a new system and try to get people on a different rate. It just any regulated industry, CBD and cannabis being regulated, or if it changes, you're kind of screwed. So just be careful about that. And also, saturated market to begin with. I'm an innovator kind of entrepreneur, right? So that's my bend, that's my bias. I like to create a new market. I like to disrupt. I like to create new things. So if I like to find a market that not a lot of people are in, or I like to find a market that's crowded but underserved. So if you have a great product that's not existing, like in the CBD space, if you figure out a new way to do something, and that's really creating a new market, I think that's more of my appetite. But that doesn't mean I'm not the only entrepreneur out there that's looking at these things and have my own opinions. There are other people that like saturated market because it's a proven market, and they have their own way of getting into those markets and then doing well. So I'm just not quite. My philosophy is to go for disruption, go for innovation. Probably because I'm a tech guy. I'm trying to get. I've been getting into real estate in the last year or so, and even real estate is a tried and true thing. I'm always thinking about how to disrupt it. What's the new things I can do? Because it's just in my heart, I enjoy doing disruptive and innovative things. That's sort of just me. Hope that answers your question in a long-winded kind of way. Do you have any more questions? I'm going to talk about one thing, and if you have more questions, please put it down there, and then I'll answer it. So anyway, I appreciate you guys watching through this, and a lot of you watching on replay. Please feel free to put your comments and questions in the comments, even with the recorded video. And as many of you probably seen, I answer almost every single comment. I try to strive to do that as long as I have the ability and time to do that. Before I grow too big, I will always answer the comments as much as I can. So if you have any questions and comments, leave it here and I'll address it next week. All right, Omar, I don't see any comments or questions from you now, so I'm going to sign off. It's past 11 o'clock. And here on Eastern time, I don't know where you are, but have a good night, and I hope I can see you next week. All right. Thank you for watching. And remember, this is Dafan the PofessorZ guiding you on your journey to success, freedom, and satisfaction. And you definitely will be successful. Bye. Thank you.